Welcome to a live edition and an interview edition of The King Perspective. My name is Chris. I'm a psychotherapist and consultant. And today I am very fortunate to have with me two dominants that are in a dominant relationship. They are LunaLux and Sovereign Kane from the wonderful country down under Australia. They live in Western Australia side. Welcome and thank you for your time, both of you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
So, what I really find interesting about your story is, and it's something that we don't really talk about as often as the bedazzled butt plugs that constantly make conversation of the BDSM community, is dominant and dominant relationships. They seem to be an anomaly. Why do you two think that is?
I think because people automatically assume that it's something that can't work, and people assume that if you are in a BDSM relationship that you have to have a dynamic. And what Kane and I have realised is that we are definitely compatible on a life level and a values level, and we don't have to have a dynamic as you would find in a traditional BDSM, couple. And people shy away because they think that's not possible, but we've discovered it's quite possible.
I think something else to consider is that people use language and labels to define sort of their reality and interactions, and a lot of people, I think, not necessarily are afraid to challenge the idea that the D type must go with the S type, but they just think that that's kind of the zeitgeist, so it feels normal. And
Right.
I think one of the most rewarding things is actually being confronted with that, despite connecting on a lot of other levels with Luna, but having a great time just agreeing to challenge it and sort of blaze our own trail.
How did your community first respond? Was it your friends that you both let know in the BDSM community, or was it like the community in general you are both a part of? If that's depending on how big it is, your scene is there.
Yeah, we obviously our friends found out first, and that's normal, and we're part of the Fetlife, for want of a better word, community. I don't think it's a community; it's an online, place for us to socialise, I guess. And we were open about it there, but obviously with our community here where we live, people became aware of it through our munches and the events that we go to. The response was generally positive. From our friends, it was really positive. Of course, there's going to be curious questions about how does that work and who's actually the dominant. You get questions like that. So, yeah, you're both doms, but who's the real dom? Also assumptions from some people who've been in the scene for a very long time that perhaps I was, actually submissive, or that I'd been a dom for a long time and now found a dom that was actually able to dominate me and now I'm submissive, but just telling everyone I'm a dom. So, there was a variety of comments, but mostly people have been curious and interested. And then there was a whole group of people who were just like, oh my God, two doms, I want to be co-dominated by you,
Yeah.
So there's that group of people too. So, it's been varied and mostly positive, I would say. I don't know if you have anything to say.
Yeah, well, I mean, people knew us separately, and we were friends sort of separately before we got together. So I think for a lot of people, it was more just Kane and Luna are together. Look at that. And yeah, like Luna said, a couple of questions here and there, and a few people who obviously have a kink fantasy of being walloped by two doms, which is fine. But nothing awkward. I mean, a lot of people in the West Australian scene are pretty relaxed with it and more curious than anything else.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you ever, and part of all that ambiguity and that questioning and those hollowed whispers that seem to always permeate the air, although I don't tend to find them as much in real life interactions as we do online. Did you ever come across the whole, Kane just really wanted to top Luna, or really just wanted to kind of get in her pants, and this was all, a ploy? There couldn't be any interest there.
you've got great pants to get into. Look, I mean, like you said in your opening question, people aren't as brave to your face as they are online. And I have no doubt that some people who may be fairly happy in a particular box or narrow lane might have been like, oh, well, it must be this because I've never had any experiences different, or I've never heard of anything different. And yeah, I can't really speak to it. It doesn't really register on my radar, to be honest. I'm more interested in making sure that, what Luna and I have is sacred, and we're free to explore it and be comfortable in what we sort of choose to define ourselves as.
And that's really, I mean, it's quite interesting, especially coming from, I'm looking at it from the psychological perspective and the dominant perspective on my side. Was there ever a pull for you at any given point, Kane, that you were like, oh God, I really wonder if she would submit to me, or vice versa, Luna, for you? Was there ever that consideration?
For me, I mean, of course, you're always curious. I don't know. Probably not, no, because when I first met Kane, like we were friends for a long time, so I never saw him as anything else other than, in the beginning, as a fellow dominant who I got on really well with, and who I clicked with and gelled with. And so I never once entertained the idea, I guess, that he would be willing to submit to me, and never asked, because all of our conversations about kink were from that perspective. So, I never pursued him in that manner. And then, when we began to click more and gel more and started dating, again, it didn't come up because we'd already gelled from that, values, friendship, relationship perspective, and not from a, we didn't tackle the relationship from who's the dom and who's going to submit. We never have. We've always tackled the relationship from, this is a really great relationship and we get on great, and there's a potential future here for us. So, yeah, so the short answer is no. I never really entertained that.
Yeah, from my point of view, when Luna and I started to connect, there was such a, I guess I was really, really impressed and taken, and really sort of respected her competence and her intelligence, and I sort of saw, well, there was never any competition for starters, because I saw a partner in crime, a teammate, and I suppose everybody has, you put yourself in a situation, if you've got a few minutes to spare and you have a think, you're like, oh, I wonder if I could try to be submissive or do something, or that submissives would do, or change my mindset. And I sort of look at her and I run those things through my head, and I'm like, it just doesn't seem like us, because we're just such good teammates and good at making other people's lives deliciously miserable that,
right,
yeah, it doesn't really work.
Would you say your relationship evolved more from a vanilla type aspect where it's more normalized, or do you think it grew, or obviously it was enhanced in its strength by your shared love for the lifestyle, but what really became that draw for the both of you when you said, you know what, all right, we need to go out on a date, let's put our nicest on, let's head down to have a nice sit down.
That's a good question. Let me gather my thoughts for a second.
This is why I like asking them.
No.
So the question is, did we evolve from vanilla, or how did it go from vanilla to where it is now?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of the best way to articulate it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of an evolution, right? I mean, for the exception of I would definitely say, well, I won't definitely because I don't have a number, but the infinitesimally small number of people who are professional in the lifestyle that this is all they do. They get paid for it. They meet, in dungeons or a dungeon. This is their life. They have nothing outside of it. So they're, in essence, 24/7 inside of the lifestyle. But for the two of you, did it kind of evolve from that side? Or, I know you were friends first. You were in the community. You knew who each other were. Did it kind of spring forth from that mutual adulation for the lifestyle, or was it really, for all intents and purposes, more of a, hey, you know what? I really just like you. I'd like to kind of go out on a date and see how this is going to work.
Yeah, well, I think thanks for reframing that for us again. I think probably both is a good answer. Like it or lump it, even people that live 24/7 super involved lifestyles and are in permanent this or permanent that, they still have aspects of their lives, fundamental aspects that are vanilla. And I think that first of all, as I got to know Luna, because our dynamics were what you would call both the same as dominance, it wasn't hugely on my radar in terms of partner compatibility, but absolutely for cross-pollinating evil ideas and having a laugh about things we enjoy. But the initial thing that really glued us together for me, and I'll let Luna answer in a moment what it was for her, but it was actually vanilla aspects of her interests and personality and her values that really grabbed me. And I think when you're looking for a life partner, one of the most important things is you should match up on values. And first of all, you need to know what your values are and how to define them so that the other person can understand them. But I feel for me that once we connected on those things, I just wanted to see what kind of fun we could have mashing two dominant styles together because, like, God knows, I never heard of it. So.
Yeah, neither of us had heard of it, and I'd agree with Kane. I think initially I hadn't entertained the idea of having a dom as a partner because everyone assumes that would never work, including me. And then as I got to know this person, realised how compatible we were on a vanilla sense, like Kane says, with our values and our interests and our goals. And then we started going, okay, well, how would this work? The more we saw each other and talked about it, we started talking about the kink side of things, and then we talked about how would this actually work, and then we started talking about all the mischief we could get up to together as a team and what our household would look like. And we started dreaming about that. So we started dreaming about vanilla things and our vanilla lives and what we could build together. And we also started dreaming about a kink life and what that would look like and what BDSM would look like as two doms. And so it grew organically on both sides.
And I'll tell you that the most important foundational aspect of exploring something like that is you need to be secure in yourself and you need to not let your ego interfere with what the two of you are trying to create.
And that's an interesting point. Was that difficult for either one of you to table, or did it just come naturally?
I must admit, I was probably more sensitive about it than Kane, if I'm completely honest. Not with Kane, but with the community. Because, as I mentioned earlier, there were, a very small group of people who assumed that because I was with another dominant that I was submissive, because people assume, it's usually a male dominant and a female submissive, which is silly because there are heaps of female doms. But, so I was probably a lot more sensitive about it, and like I said, not with Kane, but with the perception that was out there, and it was never a competition between Kane and I, but I became a lot more sensitive about making sure people knew that, hey, I'm not submissive here, I'm still the old dom that you've known for many years. So I wouldn't say it was an issue, it was more like a tender point. And then I eventually realised, you know what, I can't control what other people think, and I can only control my happiness and what I think. And when I let that go, I noticed it less, and that's because it just became a non-issue for me.
Yeah, I don't. I never had any fucks to give. Sorry to swear.
No, that's quite okay. I mean, it's
my question is good enough.
No, please go ahead, Kane. I'd love to hear you elaborate.
Yeah, no. I once I realized what a strong connection the two of us had created. I was kind of proud to be honest. And not, I'm not a showboater. I don't like attention all that much. But I was really, really happy to focus on building what we had and navigating those very sort of uncharted waters. And I mean, not without bumps, but I turned all my focus inwards. So that sort of validated me, and I wasn't really worried about what anybody else thought.
Well, I mean, it's just interesting because I know the community doesn't talk a lot about it. It's just like I know they're very far and few between are submissive and submissive relationships. But the difference being on the couple that I've talked to, they don't seem to work because there seems to be no guidance. If you kind of look at it in that view, where for the two of you, you both have extreme guidance. You both, and that guidance and that foresight happens to line up. So you two become like this, for lack of a better word, it becomes like a perfect storm. I'm sure it's not with, there've been issues somewhere, but if your ideals and what you want, not only in a relationship sync, in the lifestyle sync, marriage syncs, sharing someone syncs, all of those things kind of come together, and it really is like a perfect storm, and it becomes this anomaly that you would think would be more, I guess revered is kind of a strong word, but I mean, I really can't think of. Like I told you both when I first spoke to you, when I ran into your profiles, I'm like, this is fascinating, and I decided to watch and follow because the story is so far and few between.
Yeah, well,
it really was. No. I apologize. The reality was, I never saw ego, so I never really saw it as, oh well, yeah, Luna's really secretly topping Kane, or Kane's really topping Luna. It doesn't. There is no that appearance, at least outwardly.
Yeah, well, you're right. We still have conflict and negotiation, and we've had rough patches like any other couple would, I suppose. You could say it's analogous to having those situations in a vanilla sense, but we just have the extra considerations to take that having a kink lifestyle sort of overlays on top of normal life. But the biggest thing that keeps us a solid unit is that there's, like I said before, there's no competition, and we also both know what our goal is, and that's to make our lives better for each other and have a great time and reach harmony, sort of along with obviously life goals and whatever else you want to do. But that attitude, I think, has allowed us to get away with criminal amounts of fun.
So did you both come up with the idea for your house? Was that a joint endeavor, or was it one of you said to the other, I've been tinkering with an idea. What do you think? How did the house evolve?
Well, actually, it started with a discussion from my side. It started with a discussion. Kane has a wonderful piece of writing on his Fetlife account about called The Household. And obviously, when I was starting to get to know Kane, I went through his profile with a fine-tooth comb and read everything that he wrote, because that's how you kind of, just like you did with us, I guess. You go and, watch for a bit.
You stalk somebody, basically.
You talk them quietly and find out, does the personality match what they're saying online, And I came across this writing that he had written, and it was actually beautifully written. I loved every word of it, but there was no, the household is really, it's from the perspective of a male dom with a household of female submissives, with him. And I love the story, but in it, I was trying to place myself. I was trying to think, well, where would I fit into something like this? I'd sort of fantasize about where do I fit in, because I didn't fit in with any of the girls or the women in the story.
I need to rewrite the story with Luna in it now.
He needs to rewrite it with me in it. So I brought it up. I started talking to him about the household, and where does the idea come from, and does he imagine that that could be a real life? And I was talking about how it would be wonderful to have a household like that, and how I see myself in an environment like that. And we just started spitballing, really. Like, it was more like a fantasy discussion, like, what would that look like for us? And, from there, the discussions became, well, what could a reality look like, and how could we fit something real in our lives, and it sort of grew from there, and then the discussion stopped going from the household to what does our house look like, so that's where it started with me, and Kane will have a different perspective.
Yeah, well, for me, it followed on from, I just applied the same concept that I had to the fact that we were both dominants. When confronted with this anomaly, it's like, well, hang on a second, maybe I can own this, maybe I can explore this and turn it into something awesome. And then all of a sudden, Luna was like, hey, I read this story and I thought it was really great, and you're a very handsome and attractive writer, and, I totally want to buy you a whiskey. No, she didn't say that, I'm kidding.
But I did buy him a whiskey.
Yeah, she did buy me a whiskey, that was nice. And, we got to talking about households, and, the great thing about kink is that you can make any kind of relationship you want. The labels and stuff are just there for guidelines and help you find the people that you think would be compatible with you. And so we sort of said to ourselves, why don't we seriously, do some napkin math on this and see whether or not it's viable? And of course, taking into account how many spoons everybody has for other people in their lives and exactly why you're going to create the house, we thought, well, we're pretty relaxed and open-minded in terms of dynamic and kink, and we don't really want to restrict too many people from coming in. But we really want to make sure that we find people that don't necessarily match our kinks, but match our values, so that when you have people in the house, that whatever they're going to be doing, they fit well with the other people in the house, and everybody's trusted and everybody's looking out for each other. The acid test, I think you could say, is, I wouldn't let anybody join the house who I wouldn't go and help on the side of the freeway if they blow on a tire,
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important because it's that reciprocal back and forth of the human condition. We want someone to be genuine.
Yeah. For that reason.
Oh, no, that's okay.
For that
For
reason.
those who don't know, now you're not only married, you recently added to your family.
Yes.
Is this the first of many?
We would love to have many, but I don't think that's in the future for us. We're getting a bit long in the tooth.
Yeah, we don't want to be ancient parents.
Yeah, hopefully one more, but we'd be very grateful just to have this one, and she's a delight and probably going to be a handful for somebody one day.
Yeah, no doubt.
Totally be Kane, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, lucky for me that I'm a daddy as well as a dog. So yeah, I suppose just finishing off my thought about the house. For that reason, for the reason that we select on values, not based on community or posse or however you want to sort of describe it.
Right.
The house will never be large, and membership will never fluctuate on anything but the most glacial sort of basis, because I think when you're dealing with kink, you really need to take your time if you're going to build a authentic and trusting relationship with somebody who's not a partner for a house,
Absolutely. And, you two have been together quite some time now. It's you just constantly, work that ebb and flow back and forth, and you keep refining your styles together. Not only does it make your relationship foundation even stronger, does it enhance your dominant styles?
Yeah, I would say it does in some way. I mean, I absolutely love, there hasn't been an awful lot of opportunity for us to indulge in BDSM just recently because of, a new family member, takes up all of our time a little bit. But I absolutely love the feeling I have of, when we are with our house and we are in a BDSM scene, how wonderful and fun it is, and how absolutely safe I feel having somebody like a partner in crime with me, and and for want of a better word, I feel like the power exchange is even greater because I feel like there's somebody else there making that power exchange even greater.
Someone that gets you.
It's somebody who gets you, and it's like you use Kane's phrase, the criminal amounts of fun to look over at somebody who's also the dominant in our household, and to be feeling that power exchange with people in our house. And it's just it's given it another flavour. And it was challenging at first because at first I've always been a dom on my own. So at first it felt like, is this going to cramp my style a little bit? There's somebody watching and there's somebody else here, and now I have to make sure everyone's involved. And so initially I thought maybe this is going to cramp my style a little bit. We've got very different styles.
We do.
Completely different styles of dominance, Kane and I. So initially there was that, but now that we've found the flow and the groove of it, it's very, very fun. It's great. Yeah, it's just enhanced. It's enhanced who we are a little bit.
Yeah, from my side, I would say I would consider time in relationship. When you think about things that you learn in a BDSM or kink sort of way, the more that you do a protocol or any kind of activity that you do, the better you get at it. And if you do it more with the same person, you reach a level of comfort and ease where it becomes almost second nature and a bit like breathing in and out. You don't really have to think about it. And Luna and I have sort of reached that level where we don't necessarily have to communicate anything beyond any sort of specifics we might need, because we recognize each other's flow and energy, and I know where I can best be utilized, and she knows when she'd like to invite me into a scene, or we've reached a bit of synergy that really works well for us and is absolutely awful for any poor masochists or submissives that might get caught between us.
I think it was really quite interesting when I was listening to you say that it's enhanced your power exchange a little bit to even, to take it to a whole new level. Because you're not only talking about feeding off of the energy of the person you're with, so a submissive or a masochist or a slave, and that reciprocal relationship going on there, then you're talking about having another dominant present who then you're exchanging that power and that flow with. And where some that I've even seen in my time, and I'm sure you have as well, can feel cramped, the way you're describing it, it's almost kind of that boost in your energy that takes it to the next stage of your dominance.
Yeah, well, in the beginning, there was, I wouldn't call it friction, but the negotiation was necessary because, Luna was entering my space when I was playing, and I would be present in hers as well. And, there have been times when we have sort of played separately, again, because we work very hard on making sure that, insecurity is explored and dealt with and then filed away.
Right.
So, that definitely happens. And so I guess when you think about anybody that hasn't been in a multi-year relationship or, marriage in this case, who's dominant, who inserts themselves or is brought into another dominant space, then on such a short time frame, I think it's probably pretty normal for them to experience a little bit of disruption like that. Yeah, like we don't.
So do you both equate time to co-dominate, or do you strictly now make it a solo practice, or do you have that crossover still?
So initially we were co-dominating our submissive, who's still in our household, and that dynamic's changed a little bit, and I can go into that a little bit further. But initially we were co-dominating one person, and I also had a male submissive of my own. So we were co-dominating one female submissive, and then I had a male submissive of my own, and that became complicated because even though it was a lot of fun, and we ironed out the kinks in terms of being in each other's space. What became really challenging with the situation was because we're two dominants, unless one person was delegated, the main contact for Foof, who's our submissive, we had every time Foof asked a question, in order to make sure that we were on the same page, we would have to make sure we sat down, talked about what our response was going to be, agree on that response, then get back to Foof. And just so that Truth was never confused, did you ask one person and then the other person gave a different response?
Like parenting.
Like parenting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So initially that was a real challenge, and so it became a little bit exhausting after a while. Doing that every single day, and especially as the relationship grew, and we became close, and because Kane and I have different styles, then we were negotiating. Okay, who does what in the scene, and who's doing this, and I'm far more sadistic than Kane, so it was just about making sure there was space for that. And Kane is very, has got this very big caring and daddy dom side, so we had to mesh this sadistic side of me in a scene with Kane wanting then to come in and care and look after and make sure everyone was all right, and so that was like, not friction, but causing that a completely different kind of spin on things. And so there was a lot of negotiation that needs to go around that. And after a while, we decided, okay, we can still be together in scenes and we can still do a lot together, but we need to actually condense it down to, if there's a DS relationship, it needs to be with one person, and then the other person can have a different type of, BDSM relationship. So at the moment, Kane and Truth have an MS relationship actually, and it's wonderful, and I'll let him talk about that. And Truth and I have a sadist masochist. She's my masochist, and I top her. So I don't see myself as her dominant or as the person who controls any decisions for her. That's all on Kane's side. But then her and I, we scratch and itch with each other in terms of sadism and masochism, and that works really well because Truth wouldn't necessarily get that from Kane. He's not a heavy sadist at all. So that actually works out great because, sorry, my child is very noisy. So that actually works out very great because, we it's kind of like we've divide and conquer, Now all of the boxes are ticked and there's no, there's none of that exhausting back and forth and negotiating all the time. Can I say that, is it impossible to do? No, I don't think it is. You just need to be realistic about the time that it takes to do it, and the negotiating that it takes behind the scenes, and also agreeing on, what happens if, there's a question mid-scene. Who's going to be responsible for making sure what happens? Who's going to be making sure, so it's just, it doubles the time for anything, because there's two people making decisions on it equally. But you get better. Yeah, you do get better. So if anyone out there listening is considering doing it and doing it properly, where you're truly both co-dominating, know that it takes a lot of communication, all the time, and then it's very doable.
And then there's the clarity part for the submissive to make sure that they doubly understand coming in. Has obviously, well, I mean, I'm not going to say obviously, but in the beginning, did Foof have any clarity issues that required a lot more patience and understanding on your behalf?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it was a new situation for all of us, having three people to deal with these sort of things instead of just two. But I don't think I can really add anything on top of what Luna has said. There's just, the communication takes a lot of effort, it is complex, but it gets easier. You just have to put the hard yards in the beginning.
I actually asked her that once, and she was like, "Oh, you guys decide what you want to do. I'll just do as I'm told." And so she kind of made it very simple for her in terms of, I'll wait for them to get back to me. I'm not going to stress about it because that's not for me to control. They control that, and when they're ready, they'll get back to me. So I don't think it's stressed her out an awful lot at all. Actually, there was probably just that beginning phase of us getting used to how does this work, and also I think there were a couple of times, right at the beginning, like maybe our first ever couple of scenes together, where Kane and I were like, okay, how do we tackle having another dom in my space? And I'm sure there were moments where Foof was standing there going, okay, I'm just going to stand here and wait for somebody to decide on something.
Yeah, unfortunately, the onus is on the D types in that sort of situation, but I mean, what can you do? That's the nature of it.
Yeah.
Do you three play publicly?
No.
No, we're quite private.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that just because of now with the new Princess Edition? Have you always been private? Um,
I am quite happy to play publicly with as long as my partner that I'm playing with is happy to do that.
right.
And also it depends on the event or where we're at. I'm less likely to do a public event unless it's something very light, I guess. Private parties, I'm more than happy to do something if the person I'm with is happy to. But as the three of us, myself, Kane, and Booth, you know, not all three of us are comfortable with that, so it's something that we just don't do.
Yeah. So sorry, I should have clarified that. But yeah, we are. Yeah. In absolute privacy, where we're speaking about just our own house, then we're extremely comfortable. Laissez faire, whatever goes is fine.
And close friends, I guess, in our house.
Yeah. And private parties, perhaps depends really on, I suppose, the company and the connection.
Right.
But
I kind of was actually going to be leaning towards that question next. So, if you do the private, I know the public scene, obviously with COVID and all the restrictions, and but everybody has their determinants on whether they want to play publicly or privately, and some people make it their life to be in the public eye, while others, it's more reserved. They want to keep it at home. It's more intimate that way.
Yeah, well,
there's a bigger depth.
I believe it's just my personal sort of outlook. I think that the way that I play kink and BDSM wise is sort of very special, private, and sacred thing that I share between the people that I have a connection with. But like you say, other people thrive on attention and being in the energy of the crowd, and more power to them.
And that there's never ever been that draw to play publicly at all, to even explore the scene in a greater context.
Not overly. I'm happy to watch, and I've given a few talks at sort of minor community gatherings and events, but no, I'm playing probably wouldn't do anything for me. Skill shares, yes, but yeah, not play. Doesn't excite me.
Yeah, it's something that probably excites me more. If like I said, Ken and I are very different styles. So I love humiliation and degradation. That's one of the areas that I absolutely love and like to hone. So for me, if I can enhance that publicly, then and the person I'm with also finds that something that they'd like to explore, then I'm quite happy to go there. But again, it's I've been in situations where I've played at a public event, like a big event that we've had here,
right.
and had in mid-scene, had heard comments, she looks evil. That would make me feel so uncomfortable, and the comments that I could hear in the background sometimes pull me away, and so that's why I'm more likely to play publicly at a private event, in front of other people privately with people I trust and who understand my dynamic and understand my personality, rather than having people who don't understand context and my relationship with my submissive or my masochist and what that looks like, and being faced with comments like that. It just frustrates me.
Do you tend to, I know you're a little bit more profiled, I guess you could say, verbose online or between posting, like on, obviously on social media for like Fetlife than Kane is. Do you ever field the questions of, how do you deal with your social media presence and other people's perspectives on your relationships and your submissive inside of your house? Do you let it blow off? Do you find yourselves constantly defending a barrage, widely accepted? Everybody's kind of got an opinion on anything nowadays, so.
Like you say, I'm a lot more verbose. Like I tend to share a lot more, and I used to share a lot more than I do nowadays. It's probably more of a time thing. I started running my own business a few years back, and that decreased my time. And now with the bug, it's even harder. But I've always seen social media or Fetlife as a really great place to share my experiences and be honest and authentic. And everything I share on there is authentic, and sometimes probably, maybe I've overshared a little bit too much in the past.
Get you in trouble.
And it might get me in trouble sometimes. But I guess I've also learned, with maturity. I mean, I think I've been on Fetlife, I don't even know how many years now, but, I think I've learned over the years that, there's some things are good to get involved in and comment on, and some things just don't bother. It's just not worth the trouble. And so
it can become a headache because then
it becomes a headache.
Then you're constantly fighting an uphill battle.
Correct.
Or the people who are just trying to troll intentionally.
Yeah. So I'm quite happy to keep sharing my journey because a lot of people find that really helpful and useful, and I'll share tips. I'm a group leader on a couple of groups, and I like to keep those group discussions going when I can, and I just share things that I'm passionate about. And if people don't like it, they don't like it. I tend to stay away from arguments. If they do find something useful, that's great. And that's what I think about that, really. But I tend to avoid arguing if I can, unless something really gets my goat.
What about solicitations in your inbox that you get?
Yeah, like
the $1 million question.
Sorry, mate, I beat you to it.
Thank you.
I think interestingly, I fielded many. This might be random, or it might just be I applied the whole Fetlife, the new option, or it's not so new anymore, where people need your permission to message you. And since I've put that, it's taken away a lot of the headache. I don't get so many anymore, and I just reject messages that I just can't be bothered. I don't respond to them anymore. I just reject them, and that's been a great tool. But interestingly, I found that the older I've gotten, the less messages I get, or it might just be the reject button. But I still get a fair few, and it's like I feel like there's like waves of newcomers. You get a wave of new people. You get a wave of new people messaging you. You reject them all, and then it goes quiet again. And then a couple of months later, you get a wave of new people. And I'm actually not that fussed by it, to be quite honest. It's just something that happens. I'm a lot more relaxed about it than I was when I first joined and was getting, creeped out messages all the time. And now I'm just like, oh, whatever, and you find the authentic people and the rest just eventually leave anyway.
What about you, Ken? Do you get, do you find that when you go on that you're getting inboxed by, the bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, please take me under your wing and I'll do anything because I have no limits crowd, or has that completely subsided?
So I do get messages, but I would say infinitely more rarely than Luna. I suppose that the biggest, yes, I do, and I try to be graceful and informative and tips and suggestions, because a lot of people that do come on Fet, they'll do some profile surfing and they'll fire off a bunch of messages and, bless their cotton socks, but they're all enthusiasm and no brains. So I try to steer them here and there to a group, and as well, keep the communication private, because a lot of the time when somebody asks something in public on a group on Fet, they might get absolutely jumped on and harassed as being stupid or impolite or rude or thinking Fetlife is a dating site, or all of a sudden everybody wants to come out and prove how wise they are in the ways of Fet and BDSM.
Sure.
When it comes to, I absolutely leave Luna to her own devices. She shares stories with me about some of the more creative emails that she gets. I also, my slave, Fufina, she's a big girl. She can handle herself. There are times...
You request her to put explicit warnings that anybody contacting her must contact you or Luna first, and if you do contact Funa or Foof, that, hell hath no fury than two dominant scorned.
Yeah.
Fufina will kick your ass harder than either of us.
Yeah, she's more dangerous than both of us. Trust me. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it maybe springs from having tried so hard to make sure ego doesn't interfere with any of our relationships. Like, I don't have my head so far up my bum they'll get offended if somebody contacts Rufinia before they contact me. Because, like I say, you know, she has to live a life outside of our dynamic as well sometimes, and she's a big girl. So sometimes there are some aggressive or persistent people.
Right.
And I don't know whether it's a numbers game or an enthusiasm game, but I've had to contact people. I've had to contact people in the past and give them a little knock on the head to just get them to cool their jets a bit.
Right. A little bit of a course correction.
Yeah, you know, you don't have to puff your chest up. Just say, hey, mate, you know, pull your socks up.
Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise, what I actually use Fet for is just a way to, you know, keep abreast of events happening in my sort of local community and enjoying sexy pictures and funny comments, pretty much.
And so what's next? You know, where does the House of Karis go next?
Well,
Well, personally, you know, I mean, right now we're focused on our young little family, and food is part of our family. So, you know, where we're not having as many like full-on in-depth scenes in our household at the moment because of the new addition. What we do have is still our dynamic, and so right now our dynamics, right? So, you know, food spends an awful lot of time with us in our home. With, you know, our child is with us.
hey.
And, you know, Booth is part of our family, you know, and we see her as, you know, a family member here. And, you know, our daughter absolutely loves her, and, you know, we see that continuing for a great number of years until our child is a little bit older and we can get back down to the more heavy stuff again.
Right.
And I guess for me in the future, when I've got more time, you know, you know, before I fell pregnant, I was actually actively looking for a male submissive for myself again, the submissive that I'd been with for a long time, a number of years. But he's still really part of our household in that he'll always be welcome to attend, you know, events with us and parties with us. But for me, you know, when I've got time again and family allows, I'll be looking for that new addition to our household.
Right. I definitely see who the real dominant in the house is.
Yeah, she's totally the dominant in the house.
Yeah.
She rules the roost.
Tiny mistress.
The tiny mistress.
Curious, what will be your approach in the future for your daughter? Will you tell her everything, or is it going to be 100% disclosure? Obviously, some details notwithstanding, but what will be because there's a lot of parents out there that are involved in the lifestyle, one fashion or another, married or single or widowed, whatever the case may be. You know, they've got to balance the desire of their life to be a dominant or be a submissive or be a bottom or whatever the case may be, but they also have a child, or they have a young boy or girl, or they have a teenager. Some people are quite adamant about, I tell my child everything.
Mm-hmm.
Others are like, really private.
Yeah.
How have you two discussed that?
Yeah, we've touched on it, and I think no matter what we say, somebody is going to disagree with us. Every parent has a different perspective on this, and
Sure.
For us, we think some things just need to remain in private. I'm not intending to actively lie to my child about anything, but I think just some things aren't meant to be shared and aren't meant to be I never wanted to know about my parents' sex life, and I still don't. You know what I mean? It's just like it's just something I don't want to know about, and I don't think I don't know of many kids who would be 100% comfortable with that. Maybe some do. There probably are a lot that are, but for us, I think it's just something sacred and it remains for us. And maybe when she's older and she's an adult, and if she knew anything or suspected anything, and she outright asked me, I'd be honest. I'm not going to lie, but I'm also not going to share every single minute detail because I don't think that would be be 100% necessary. Okay, do you want to add anything?
Yeah. Look, I think it's my job to make sure that my children can operate in the world and be successful and have great lives. To give them that, I suppose you'd call it vanilla toolkit.
Right.
And if somebody's child decides that they want to join the kink community or they turn out to be kinky, that's entirely their decision. And if they reach out, of course you want to be there to help them and explain things, but I don't think necessarily that it's something that should be a required part of a child's education from their parent.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I agree with what Luna said. Every parenting style is going to be different. For every book that's been written, there's a reason why there's thousands of parenting books, because there's no definitive answer. And as long as it's healthy and safe and sane, that's pretty much all that matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, and look, again, it's going to depend on how, what age, my child is at. It's like we're not going to be openly having, having scenes in front of our children. It's just never. I just don't see us ever doing that. Of
Right.
course, it's going to be in our house. That's part of our household. There are things in our household that are definitely, BDSM items. They're not going to be displayed out in the open. And my child and her friends come over, and they're all over the place, and people are like, "What's this?" So I think it's just some things remain in private, and then we might change our mind. When she's older and asking questions, we might decide then that maybe now's the time to discuss it. And I think it's more just assessing where we're at and what stage we are in life.
Yeah, if they want to explore it, we'll be there for them. If not, no big deal.
Well, that's great. I think it's a really open view. Especially as the world is evolving now, and we're accepting of so many things. I think it always comes back down to that age-old discussion. What don't we discuss when we're at the dinner table? We're never supposed to discuss religion. We're never supposed to discuss politics. But I really don't think those are the two most taboo subjects. I think what it comes down to is we never talk about sex.
Mm-hmm.
We all do it. We're all going to potentially do it with someone, or at least alone. But how do we discuss that?
Well, I don't think sex will be a taboo subject for us. I think our job as parents is to really teach our children about values and about finding the right people. And
Absolutely.
If you're having sex, what does that mean? And discussing those things, I never want that to be taboo. But in terms of the details of my sex life, I'm not going to tell her, oh, by the way, we've got a dungeon downstairs, and I beat people up in there. I'm never going to go into those details unless she outright asked me if that was something that I wanted to do, or I just think there's a way to do it in a healthy way. It's not about sharing the details; it's about sharing the values and the discussion around having healthy sex lives and
right.
Healthy fantasies. And if you are kinky, she came and tell me she was kinky one day. I'd want to have a really healthy discussion about what that looked like, and I could share some of my experiences for sure, but I'm not going to give her the details.
Yeah, and I think that's the one great thing that the lifestyle provides. Because there's so many back and forth negotiations, unlike normal relationships or vanilla style framed relationships, we get used to, negotiating and talking about things we like and don't like. We get used to rejection, because rejection is almost a constant in the lifestyle. We're far more adaptive. I find most people in the lifestyle are far more adapted to rejection than a person who is non-lifestyle. Where if you tell them you didn't like something sexually, they obviously it's quite upsetting. But in the lifestyle, when you talk to somebody about certain sexual proclivities, or a scene you want to do, or something you want to try, they're like, oh, I'm either into it, I don't know, yeah, maybe, or just no. And we're all okay with that. And it really gives us that, it gives us another kind of layer. And it's just really interesting to hear you talk about that, the both of you, even as far as, what the potential view that your princess could eventually have.
Yeah, well, the important thing is, if you get the fundamentals right, then they'll have a good base for exploring whatever it is they explore. So that's
Sure.
important.
Sure, and I'm sure there's going to be people out there that are going to go, well, you shouldn't tell your child anything, or conversely, you should be completely 100% honest. I think, I agree. There are things that are private, and they're private for a reason. And there are the things you don't want to know about. I don't want to discuss my parents' sex life. I've never wanted to know. I'm not, idiotic enough to think that I just sprouted from a stork, but yeah, I don't want to hear the sordid details. I'm fine with that. I think even at my age, I still kind of get repulsed thinking about that, but that's normal of the human condition because we don't want to think of our parents in that way.
No, we don't.
But interestingly though, Bruce, a few years back, my mum came. My mum doesn't live here, and my mum came to visit, and I hadn't seen her in maybe 5 years. And we were making dinner together, and she interestingly dropped a juicy tidbit that I hadn't even solicited about her relationship with my dad, and how my dad in the early days had wanted to have a poly-style relationship with somebody else.
Wow.
And she didn't label it poly, that she didn't have a label for it. It was never labeled poly in those days. But she was sharing her a little bit of a heartache around, what that felt like for her at the time.
I can imagine.
And it was really eye-opening for me, because I was like, wow, here I am, exploring those same things in my relationships. And it was really interesting hearing it from a perspective from then. And I felt incredibly lucky today to have the information that I have available to me, that my mum didn't have at the time.
Right.
So, yeah. So that's interesting too. Sometimes, yeah, you have an interesting discussion, but it's not the detail.
I'd really love to have the both of you back because, there's something interesting we talked about earlier in the week when we talked about your views and how when I posed the question, if you're poly, and your response to that. I don't want to go into that now. I'd really love to have you both back on when time permits, obviously, to discuss that because from all intents and purposes, the relationship does look that way. But I know you have another name for it, and it's really I like the way you both describe it, and I think it really brings a different view and level to considering another avenue of a multi-relationship functionality between three adults that's not necessarily under the poly label.
Yeah, we'd be happy to chat to you about that anytime you like.
Oh, that would be great. Well, look, I want to thank you both for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. Again, having two dominants that are working together, it is an anomaly, but you two really made this perfect maniacal storm together. It's really quite interesting, and I'd definitely love to explore more of this with you guys in the future. When you, like I said, when you have time, and your princess approves, of course.
Well, hopefully next time we'll be better organised and have somebody be able to look after the princess while we chat to you, so you don't have her babbling around in the background the whole time.
But I think that it does provide that layer for those that do have families that are involved in the lifestyle. Like, how do we make it work? Well, look, they're making it work, and it's like you said before earlier, Kane. You have to be willing to put in the hard work. You have to start having those discussions and sitting down. Okay, I want to get involved into a scene tonight, so maybe you'll babysit, or vice versa, and you work out those details. And it's not always the most pleasant, but you make it work.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, it's like, what's the end goal? The end goal is to have a fulfilling relationship where people get to do fun things, and you might have to suck it up for a little while so your partner can have some fun, but then they'll blossom for it and reciprocate. It's all about give and take.
Absolutely. Well, look, I want to thank you both. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's given me a little bit more insight to look into a deeper part of the lifestyle that's whether it's talked about or whether there's more dominant relationships out there that really should be, you know, not necessarily on the forefront talking about, but I think it's something that it's another conversation we really ought to be having. Um, you know, I don't know. I think some people think of it. It's like you said earlier. They don't want to. They think that at the end of the day, ego's got to step in front. That it can't be a joint adventure,
Yeah,
and you could miss out on a lot of great opportunities because you want to let your ego get in the way.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and you've got to see yourself as a team, yourselves as a team,
Right.
and you know, yeah. So yeah, I'd say if you've ever considered it and then thought it would never work, reconsider, and if you can find the right person to do it with, you will have enormous amounts of fun. And challenges too, but it will be very rewarding.
I want to apologize for some of the audio, mainly on my side. I want to thank both LunaLux and Sovereign Kane for joining me on this episode of The Kink Perspective. This was an interesting and wonderful look inside the world of a dominant relationship. It was my pleasure to host them and look forward to speaking with them on their relationship views and how they define themselves within inside of that matrix. Until next time, be safe and stay kinky.